Aloha! Hey! Oh, that's Bubba. Okay, we're going live. Our first time. Feminist News Network, the feminist news that's right for you. We're live and we're live streaming. First time. Hey! Because we're doing the book review for Harlem Nocturne. Yeah. I'm so sorry that I'm late about doing the live take, but hold on. But whoa. But I wanted to make sure I had it right, and I didn't on my webcam. So I had to fix that. So I decided to go live on myself. Hey! I figured out how, so we're here. And hold on. So there's nobody out there. That's all right. That's okay. We love you anyway. And so if you realize I'm live and I'm talking about Harlem Nocturne. It's a book by Farah Griffith. Her middle name is Jasmine. I like that. Really cute. Very very Disney. But she's older than that, so we know it didn't come from that. But Harlem Nocturne is a really good book, and Farah Griffin is a professor of women's studies and African American history from Columbia University, and you may have seen her on Democracy Now! And other places like that. And, being a power to the people, black feminist that I am, I thought for the start of a Feminist News Network book, this was the best book to do. Oh, wow. You can see a lot going on. All right, a practice aloha. That's what's on my screen. So, yeah, so I'm glad that we are able to talk about this book tonight, even if it's just me talking about it to myself. So I got some comments from people. Thanks for tuning in. And I want to shout out love to my subscribers that are out there. Thanks, subscribers. I got 40 now. I'm gonna grow soon. Maybe one day I'll be at 50. So because I would like to do a push for 50, and when I hit 50, maybe show another special. I got a couple of specials that I got going on Olelo that I'm trying to do. Culture Shock, which is about poetry. And I got another one that I'm trying to do. It's adult poetry and rapping and singing and performing. And then I got another one that I want to do that's Wacky Key Tattoo Confessions. That should be an awesome one. But let's get started and get going. On the book review. So the reason why I put on my glasses is because I wanted to read an epilogue that's in the book that I think is pretty meaningful. Okay. And it says, I'm talking in regards to the section that began because let me say this. Women's artists of the progressive politics during World War II. Now, this is a period during the late 30s through the 40s, when there was the great migration of blacks coming up from the sharecropping fields of the South up to the North to work industry jobs and help the other poor whites work for worker union rights. Yeah, there was a lot that went on, especially in the riots in St. Louis during the 20s, and riots in Detroit, Philadelphia, and Chicago that fought to get union and worker rights. And when those finally settled with the Gilded Age and things of that nature, and after World War One, blacks were still going through it. You know, Black lives still mattered then like they do now. And one of the things that went on was the Great Migration, like I was mentioning, and they were coming up. So these are three women. The story talks. I heard that she wanted four, but left out one, and it would have been a white woman or a Holly woman, but she didn't fit into the narrative. But it's three women that dealt with that era and lived and handled the politics. I don't know so much of them all being activists, but most definitely one of them was and dealt the consequences of being such. And these three women are Pearl Primus, Pearl Primus, and Ann Patry, and Mary Lou Williams. Ann Patry was a writer, Mary Lou Williams was an artist. But Pearl Primus was the dancer. And she was the type of dancer, not like the girl that was doing films in Hollywood, but that did Storming Weather and stuff. But no, she wasn't like her. She was better. She was who Alan Ailey or Alvin Haley replicated, studied, was an idol of. Because this woman was known for a jump that could go as high as 5 feet. And she danced with poetic motion that was an interpretation of what she knew to be the Jim Crow era. And she was interpreting the Jim Crow era through dance. And she also was a communist. Now, Pearl. Oh, wow. I got a phone call coming in. All right. Let's see. Should we accept it? I don't know. Let's answer. Hello? Hello? Oh. Hello? Okay, we can't hear you. But you know what? I'm live. And I'm on YouTube Live. And now you're going to be a part of it. Can you please hang up and call me later? Thanks. Oh, okay. All right. It says all messages are visible, and good for that. So, Pearl Primus, let me get my notes. Let me get my notes. Okay, so okay, and Petrie, there we go. We know about her. Oh, somebody said social justice through eyes of women of the 40s. That is a good review of that. And okay, here we go. Yeah, she did the Freedom Rally in Madison Square Garden, of course. But let me see. And Patry was from Connecticut. Williams, they think, was born in Atlanta, and she was a part of the Chitlin Circuit, Mary Lou, and ran around. And but Pearl, I believe she came from she's the one that had an FBI file, and she was from Tennessee, right? Don't let me reread this book, because I started it a long time ago. But let me read an excerpt from Pearl Primus's Dancing Freedom. Okay. Because with World War II raged overseas, 20,000 people gathered at Madison Square Gardens, the second annual Negro Freedom Rally, and most of them came to be entertained. Now I'm going to jump forward. With the breakout of World War II, Black Americans saw a particular irony in continued existence of racial discrimination and segregation within the nation's border, even as Black soldiers risked their lives as war and freedom aboard. So she was giving us context to what was going on during World War II with the Black soldiers, which we all know were, it was the Jim Crow era, so they weren't respected at all, just like the soldiers of World War One. But at least they stood up for more rights, which did lead not to RFK, but Truman segregating, unsegregating the troops. So, here it is out of the book, page 24. And in his Chicago Defender column, the revered poet Langston Hughes wrote, "Every time she leaped, folks felt like shouting. Some did, some hollered out loud." On this night, Primus began to live out her calling, to use the language of dance to represent the dignity and strength of Black people and to express their longing for freedom. Primus saw dance as a means of contributing to the ongoing struggle for social justice. The politically conscious young dancer had learned that the dancers' movements has the power to transform the observer's consciousness. This was central a central component of the aesthetic that formed her practice, a component she inherited from the tradition of vernacular dance born in of Africa, and one that was also central to modern dance itself. In fact, the great modern dance critic and Primus champion John Martin insisted that movement in and of itself is a medium of the transference of an aesthetic and emotional concept from the consciousness of one's individual to that of another. Oh, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. This woman transformed the Jim Crow era into dance. That was awesome. That was great. That was the best thing she did. And I enjoyed reading about her the most. Anne Patry, she was a writer. She did the People's Voice newspaper, and she was down in New York. And hung out and moved from the Greenwich Village area down to like 135th and all of that, and wrote a book called The Street, and she was the first woman to sell 1 million copies. And The Street was a book that had lasted in print for decades, into the 70s and 80s. But Mary Lou Williamson grew up on the Chitlin circuit, and she was a child prodigy who learned how to recite or play piano by ear from her mother at the age of 2. Scared her mother to death learning how to play, so or knowing how to play, and that was great. And I really enjoyed reading her story because she was a mentor to people like Monk and them. And when she finally got to, New York, and stayed in Harlem and got her own place and settled down, it was all about her finally being settled and having a place. And Primus and Mary Lou both performed at Cafe Society, which was an integrated club, and and they would perform together. I don't think Anne Patry, who was the writer, ever knew those two, but those two did know each other. And Mary Lou wasn't very much of an activist at the time, as much as a performer and a writer, and aware of her surroundings and aware of the time she lived in, and put that into music, because you must remember she did play the piano for Billie Holiday when she did perform Strange Fruit, which was first performed at Cafe Society. So let me just say something about that. Excuse me for a second. Ooh, it's hot as crap in here. Okay. So, and excuse me. And she was breaking barriers in that way. But once the riots hit in 43, which affected them all and affected all of the Harlem Renaissance era, after that, the radical talk that created the unions and the move forward that helped the blacks kind of got muffled and muzzled, and the talk of Langston Hughes and the other poets that came after wasn't as radical as, say, Ann Patry or the the People's Voice was, and the McCarthy blacklist era, which, there was an extensive foul on Pearl, and it, because she was communist, it basically brought her down. But women like Anne wasn't affected, but she was infected in the way to where after the riots, her family left Harlem, and so did Pearl. But Pearl went on to do other things. I don't want to try to say I'm picking her as my favorite out of the book, but I am. Yeah, I liked her a lot, really a lot, and her story was just awesome. You got to read it. I'm trying not to give it away because I'm just going to do it as a review, and I didn't get a big enough response from anybody to, tell too much more, because I really, really want y'all to read it. It's a really good book. And I liked how she put in words from other poets and people of the time, and gave you a historical and political look at what was going on. Because, like Ann Patry, she started a club for, housewives. I have a living cheap Facebook page. So she had, a housewives thing, and when she would be out and about, she would, try to catch the sales and the deals and pass it on to the women at the group. And that's just like what we used to do, except I guess they didn't have coupons back then, double coupon days. So that was really cool that she had somebody in a group of people she connected with that helped her, to inspire more of her realism and radical writing that she did. And uh, Mary Lou, after the riots, who was the only one that stayed in Harlem, became more politically active after the riots, which are awesome, helping the youth and things of that nature, and inspiring other great, to be piano players and musicians. So that was awesome of her. And Pearl, just who came out of the new dance group, which was the first integrated dance group of its time, which was a totally radical thing for the 30s and 40s. Believe me. And New York, of all places. And you wouldn't tell by the way New York acts nowadays. But anyway, so she toured, she started her own dance troupe, she went to Europe. She just became the legend that Pearl Primus is, a legend. And these are the unsung women that we know as legends, or you should know as legends, but aren't talked about out of the Harlem Renaissance era, as, say, as much as maybe Dinah Washington, Ella Fitzgerald, even though Ella would have sang at Cafe Society with Mary Lou Plain, and Mary Lou had people like Monk in a band, and helped out people like Miles Davis when they started off, and did arrangements for Ellington, you know what I'm saying? So to not have her input was great. Was to not have her input into history is a great miscarriage of literary, you know, injustice. Thank goodness people like Farrah Griffith are making sure that we know those unsung heroes of that era. You know, the first woman to write sell 1 million novels for a fictional book that was just as important during its day for black people as Catcher in the Rye was for other people, you know. And that's very significant. You know, it was not Jackie Collins that got the first 1 million copies, it was Anne Patry. You know, and she did two more novels after that and a lot of short stories. And, you know, they never got the success that the street got. But that's okay because she made one good, profound book. You know, Hemingway made one or two good, profound books, and that was it for him. You know, and he was born and came from up out of that era, but his books never had the realism that Anne Patry's book did, and her talk in writings in regards to the darkness and confusion with talking about the riots, a short story about the riots, is, you know, it was, it was, it was, it, it came from the point of view of a man and not a woman. And it's wrong to think that she could not right coming from that point of view, but she could, and she handled it full heartedly, most definitely, if you take time to read a little bit of that. So, I want to thank you for checking me out today. This was my first live program. I had to rig up the cell phone to do it, but I was happy to do it. So I'm going to read some comments that I wrote down that got emailed in and Facebook messaged in. I asked people to message me if they wanted to hear anything. So let me read the first. I thought I'd write them on these cute little Hawaiian cards. All right. So the first one is from Delta to You. Okay, Delta to You. All right. She was saying, good luck with your show. I got to see Farrah Griffin at Columbia University. She helped women in regards to teaching Black history of these feminist women to our students, and it's something that I can't make out my own handwriting, but that's okay. That's okay. That was needed. I'm guessing. Okay, so she just had a comment to say. All right. And we have another comment written on there. We have Snake Skin. Snake Skin wanted to ask a question. Did Pearl Primus do any time or had to confess is at or do a hearing for communism? She had her passport taken away from her and she wasn't allowed to travel for quite a period of time, but she wasn't locked up or anything like that. So No, but she was blacklisted and blackballed from playing at certain venues for a little while. Okay. And I'm going to take one last one. Woo, 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 woo. Okay, this is from my daughter Angelica. Yay! She says, all right, Mom, good going. Um, Sorry I couldn't read all the book, but I did read the first part about Pearl. Oh, well, at least she read about Pearl. That's the one I like the most, and she is at the beginning of the book. All right. And so that's it. I want to thank everybody for watching, and thanks for being a part of my first live show. And I know I got this little thing right there. It's kind of cheap, but I did it myself, and I appreciate it. So I would be happy to do more Q&A and take on comments. And I just want to say, if you care to subscribe, please do. And don't forget to ring the bell so you can get notifications. And excuse me. And I appreciate you watching. Thanks for joining. You have any questions, story ideas, or anything else, contact me at feministnewsin@gmail.com. Like my Facebook page, and I appreciate you watching. Thanks for joining, and hopefully we could do more of these live chats. That's where it's at. All right. Peace. Now I got to figure out how to cut it off. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to touch it.